My name's Tom Place, this is Chasing Cars, and with me today is the Leapmotor C10. And if you're from America, that name might stick out to you, C10, as a classic Chevy pickup truck, but this could not be any further from that. This is a fully electric mid-size SUV set to make its debut in the Australian market in Q4 of this year. Now, being a mid-size SUV that's fully electric, you might normally think it would compete with things like the Tesla Model Y, and you're probably going to be right, but there's also a good chance that this vehicle is going to be fairly aggressive price-wise when it does indeed land in Australia, though we don't know the price just yet. But before we get to this car, we should really start with what on earth Leapmotor is. Now, the Leapmotor brand was started in China back in 2015 by an electrical engineer, and a few years later, it was actually partly purchased by Stellantis, which has given it an avenue to land here in Australia. And the thing that Leapmotor is very insistent of in our communications with them is the fact that they don't want to be known as a car company, they want to be known as a tech company. And you're going to see signs of that when we're having a walk around of this vehicle today. Now, this is actually only the start of the Leapmotor brand here in Australia. They're looking at launching another 5 vehicles between now and the beginning of 2027. And among them is also a 3-row version of this vehicle known as the C16. And interestingly, while this is a fully electric version and so is the C16 by default, they also have plug-in hybrid versions which could very well come to Australia. Now, before we jump into this vehicle, please don't forget to like and comment down below and subscribe if you want to join us on our way to 200k.
Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
Now, at launch, there's going to be 2 versions of the C10 available in Australia. The Style and the Design, which is the top spec one and the one that we have with us here today. Both are rear-wheel drive only models, putting at 160 kilowatts of power and 320 newton meters of torque to that rear axle. They also have only one battery option, which is 69.9 kilowatt hour gross battery size with an LFP style battery. Range is acclaimed at 420 kilometers, which is certainly good for our climate. And I think it's pretty decent for a battery of that size, but we'll wait for a full Chasing Cars range and charging test to validate if that indeed stands up in real world conditions. Now, looking at the outside of these 2 models, there's not too much to tell. Mainly it's to do with the wheels. The base one comes on a set of 18-inch wheels, and this is the design, so it comes with 20-inch wheels. You can see we've actually got a decent set of tires on this as well. These Dunlops on here, which look pretty striking, and I actually quite like the wheel design. It's a little bit of an interesting contrast of this kind of smooth and sleek Volvo-esque design combined with this more cutting and sharp wheel design. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Is it too boring, or is it just a little bit more tasteful and reserved? I suppose it's up to everyone's judgment. Now, one of the key innovations that Leapmotor was keen to point out is the fact that they actually don't really have a traditional battery pack per se. They have a cell-to-chassis design, as they call it, where they integrate the battery cells up into the chassis. And apparently, this doesn't actually prove to be difficult when it comes to replacing things like battery packs if you do indeed need to. And apparently that keeps production costs down, which means it should make it a little bit more affordable for the consumer, which is something we always love to see. Jumping into the interior of the C10 now, and you know, there's a lot of different emerging trends and things like that in the EV market, and I think this is kind of got a little bit of a newer spin on what is becoming a more commonplace design. And what I mean by that is that we have a minimalist design, obviously, but some of the material choices in this cabin are a little bit interesting. Starting up front, we've got a basic leather steering wheel here, and we've also got these seats here, which are they're a little bit interesting. So on the base ones, you just get some basic vinyl material, but this is what they call silicone leather. And if you touch the seats, you'll understand what they mean by that. And they're actually really quite comfortable as well. There's 7 layers of foam on here as well. But I do want to take this for a good drive before I say they're officially comfortable seats, because it's easy to make a comfortable seat, but to make a supportive seat is another matter. So that's something to look into when we take this for a drive finally. But sitting in the seats now, I am able to sort of tune these seats to my liking. We've got 6 ways of power adjustment on the driver's side, and we've got 4 ways of power adjustment on the passenger side. So I am able to kind of tweak it to my frame. I'm 6 foot tall, but there is no lumbar adjustment or anything like that. Elsewhere in the interior, look, some of the materials here, they're all fairly soft. I wouldn't say they feel super expensive, but they don't feel cheap and nasty, that's for sure. And it's a nice little encouraging sign. It's a little bit hard to judge this vehicle at present because we don't actually know how expensive it's going to be. And that very much changes the context of the situation. But we do understand that it's going to be on the more affordable end, somewhere around the Model DIY pricing territory, at least we hope so. But look, in general, looking around the cabin, it does seem to have a fairly nice design. And one thing I do like is the fact that despite the fact that they've only really just launching their first car here, Leapmotor has gone to the effort of bringing in 4 different interior trims, or 4 different interior colors, I should say, for this model, including 2 browns and 2 blacks. So that's really nice to see. You actually get a little bit of individuality as far as when you spec out this car. And there's also a really nice green, which I'd love to see in person with this nice brown interior. Now, as far as tech in this cabin, the first thing I noticed is the fact that we've actually got a separate gauge here in front of us for our speed, which is great. You know, something I don't particularly love on Teslas personally, so it's nice to see they've gone to the trouble of doing that here. This is a 10.25-inch display, and it also has the ability to do things like display our maps in addition to some other information. The main command center, though, is the 14.6-inch landscape media screen here. This does everything, of course. There's no buttons to go along with it. This is where you've got to go through for absolutely everything. And some people aren't going to like that. Look, I think a lot of it does depend on how well this screen functions in the real world. We haven't had very long to play with this today, but look, my experience has been pretty good so far. It makes a good amount of sense, although it is a little bit of information overload at first, and I think that is just a symptom of the fact that we have everything in here, because I need to have more icons and more submenus just so they can cover all the things that you need to get done. The one downside about this multimedia system, though, is the fact we don't actually have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto built in, which is really quite unusual. Now, we have seen brands go down this path before. Polestar, for example, had Android Automotive fitted in their system, and they didn't have wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto of any kind, though eventually they did find themselves adding in Apple CarPlay at the end. So I wonder if we'll see a bit of a backpedaling on that situation in years or indeed months to come. But look, for now, I'm willing to give this a bit of a go. And one of the reasons for that is the fact that we do actually have some genuinely useful apps built in. So of course, we've got navigation, but we also have, as you can see here, some Spotify built in, and it actually functions fairly well. And the screen itself is really quite nice and crisp, and it's actually quite responsive as well, which is quite nice. We also have, let's have a look here. We've got our 360-degree camera, which, as you can see, has a bit of an X-ray effect. And then, what else we got? And of course, I can't forget the fact that we have TikTok. You know, this is 2024, and it probably speaks to the younger target market of this vehicle. So if you want that, it's right here for the taking. So look, there you go. We also have our climate controls integrated into the screen here. And if I press this button, you'll see that we actually have the ability to adjust our vents. I don't know if I super love that myself, but look, it's there. And if you don't find yourself changing your vents very often, perhaps that's not much of a nuisance to you. But like, as I said, at least it's fairly responsive. In the back, we do have manual versions of those vents though, so you don't have to do it for the whole car. Now, in terms of nice standard features, it's also worth noting that we do have a 12-speaker unbranded stereo in this vehicle, which, look, from my quick listen, sounded fairly nice. We've also got a wireless phone charger, and above me is a 2.1 meter square panoramic sunroof. And unlike other brands, I've actually gone to the trouble of fitting in a sunshade here, so you can actually close it, not just leave it open all the time, which seems to be annoyingly quite popular in vehicles nowadays. Now, as far as things that are actually reserved for the design grade that I'm sitting in now, in addition to the silicone leather seat material, we also have a heated steering wheel and heated seats, which is always lovely to have. But anyway, that's enough for the front. Let's jump in the back. Jumping into the back seat now, and I think it's immediately apparent the core mission of the C10 and the fact that they've actually done a pretty good job with it, and that is the fact that they want to make this, first and foremost, a family car. And it really starts with the fact that I have a heap of space back here. Look how much room I've got in front of my knees here, my toes. Look, I don't have a lot of under thigh support, I will be honest. And I think that is just, and once again, a symptom of the fact that this is an EV. Look, perhaps they could have created a bit more of a pocket for my feet to go down a bit further, because the big battery pack under the floor, fortunately in so many EVs, just puts your knees up in the sky. Not too ideal, but certainly not the worst that I've experienced in EV, that's for sure. We've also got a really good amount of headroom, actually. I'm 6 foot tall, and it's not too much of an issue at all, even with this panoramic sunroof. So good points there as well. We've also just got some basic things like some vents here as well, and we've got both USB-C and USB-A charging points. We've also got a little bit of storage behind the seats here, which is always nice, and a nice hard back here, so you're not getting it too scratched up. And I will also note that just around the cabin, there's a nice amount of soft materials here. I'm not entirely sure what they are. There will seem to be some version of plastic, but nevertheless, the feeling is that they're nice and soft, and it does feel nice and cozy. I will say that though this silicone leather, as I sit here at the moment, I'm not sure it's going to be super great when it comes to sweat. I feel myself getting a little bit hot and sweaty in this car, so that's another one to test when we finally get this out onto the open road. As far as other amenities, look, we do have a put-on armrest here, and if we put that back up, we also have a set of ISOFIX in each of the outboard seats. And one thing I did also notice was when I sat in the middle before, I could actually quite easily sit there. It's a little bit firm. You wouldn't want to be sitting there super long term, but I think 3 adults could fit across the back here quite easily. So that's very nice indeed. But that isn't all that you can do with the back seat. So this is a quirky little part of the back seat experience. The fact that we can put the front seat all the way flat and really recline and relax. Once again, the back seats are actually really quite soft and padded. So look, while the charging time might not be the fastest in the C10, you do at least have a nice place to sit while you're waiting for it to be topped up. I could easily see myself sitting here with a laptop working away as it does so. Interestingly, you do also have the ability to make the front and back seats completely flat. This back seat also folds down, so if you do a bit of camping, that might be one feature to keep your eye on. Coming around to the boot of the C10 now, and we open up the power tailgate here. The power tailgate only comes on the top spec design we have with me now, and reveal a 581 litre boot. Really quite respectable boot size, this one, and it's also nice and square, and we do have this nice high roof line as well. I think it's a real benefit of the fact this is such a boxy design. Now, if we fold those seats down flat, that becomes 1,410 litres. So look, overall, pretty good marks for the boot. The only thing I will say though is we don't actually have any tie-down points to secure some luggage, and there really isn't much elsewhere in the way of amenities. Maybe some shopping bag hooks here, but it's pretty bare bones in general. Lift up the floor here, and look, we do have a little bit of extra storage, but what we don't have is a spare tyre. Once again, this is yet another EV that doesn't have a spare tyre. So it is an electric vehicle. Let's now talk about charging. The thing that stands out to me is the fact we do actually have a heat pump fitted as standard on this vehicle, which is something we see on most, but not all EVs, and it's really great to see that more and more standardized in the industry. Now, when it comes to charging, the max DC charging speed is 84 kilowatts. So look, that's probably not the best in the business, but the one figure that sticks out to me is the fact that you can go from about 30 to 80% in about 30 minutes. So if you're on the road, that's not quite the end of the world. The AC charging speed really isn't quite so crash hot though. It's about 6.6 kilowatts max. So yeah, you're gonna have to be a little bit organized when it comes to charging with the C10.
Following our walk around with the C10, Stellantis did confirm that it would be covered by a 7-year, 160,000 kilometre warranty, which doesn't go as far as some others who do offer an unlimited kilometre version of this 7-year warranty, but it's still pretty good nonetheless. The EV componentry, such as the battery, will be covered by a longer 8-year, 160,000 kilometre warranty.
Exceeding at the ordinary is something that many car makers have tried, but few have actually succeeded in properly implementing and then also making that known to buyers out there. Think Volvo when it comes to this sort of thing. Now, one of the other aspects that they say goes into this claim, and something we haven't had a chance to test just yet, is when it comes to the driving experience. And I'm not talking about driving dynamics. I'm talking about the fact that it has a very low NVH, best in class, they say, and it's also very quiet on the open road, even down to the electric motor, which they say is even quieter than regular electric motors. So that's something we're very keen to test out indeed. Another encouraging sign for the C10, I think, is the fact that they're actually doing this properly. They're taking a holistic approach, and they're actually putting this through ANCAP's program. So it'll be interesting to see the results that come out of there. They're hoping, of course, for a 5-star ANCAP rating, and they do have a slew of active driver assistance features here, which hopefully should work well in the real world. Now, I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on this vehicle, because it is, of course, yet another EV SUV from China onto the Australian market. Though it does have a few things going for it, as I've outlined today, but also the fact that we have a lot of electric small SUVs on the market, but not quite as many fully electric mid-size SUVs. Of course, we've got the Model Y, but other than that, there aren't too many serious competitors in that space, at least at a affordable price point. So it'll be interesting to see where the price lands on this when push comes to shove. But anyway, I want you to guys let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. Also, like and subscribe if you want to see our first drive with the C10. But for now, that's all. Thank you for watching Chasing Cars.